Hi, and welcome to my public transport report, part of Group 4's group report on research question 4. My research question is, how does public transport usage and perceptions differ across demographics? Effective transportation systems are crucial to Victoria's economic prosperity and livability. A system would fail to function without the current public transport systems. Public transport provides people with access to employment, education, healthcare, and other services. The need for public transport has increased and is linked to economic growth and a growing population. Public transport has been cited as a key component in tackling the issues of traffic congestion and greenhouse gas. Public Transport Victoria has a focus on improving services, increasing passenger numbers, and addressing our needs to be more sustainable as a community. The Victorian Auditor General report on public transport explains that public transport satisfaction has significantly declined over the previous decade. This was identified as being due to the rapid growth of population and unforeseen increase of the use of service. However, it is acknowledged that the full understanding of the root causes of dissatisfaction is not established. As a response to the rising displeasure among passengers, the Department of Public Transport is insistent on using evidence-based understanding of performance issues to help develop effective framework forecasting and managing current and future performance. As highlighted in the Transport Integration Act in 2010, public transport must be meeting users' needs, delivering a coordinated system, contributing to a more sustainable state, improving access to public transport for people with disabilities. This report that we've developed aims to contribute to the solutions to improve public transport through the identifications of concerns held by customers. For this report, we developed a questionnaire that was relating to people's perceptions about public transport. Our researchers proceeded to undertake the public transport questionnaire during the week of the 21st of October 2018. 120 people were surveyed in person from within Melbourne, Geelong, the Surf Coast, East Gippsland and the Goulburn Valley. The survey respondents completed the surveys themselves, but the group members were on hand to answer any questions that were required. All survey respondents were handed the 2018 Consent and Information Letter, were advised that they could halt the survey at any time and all information was anonymous. The variables that were being measured by respondents' questions were value and reliability of public transport. The value perception variable was measured by respondents being asked 5 questions relating to the respondents' perception to how much value for money public transport delivers. The reliability perception was measured by the respondents being asked 5 questions relating to the respondents' perception of how reliable public transport is. Respondents were also asked if they had used public transport, how often, where they travel to, and if they hold a driver's license. Further to the questions about the respondents' perceptions of value and reliability, respondents were also asked basic demographic questions such as age, sex, education, where they live, and income. The questionnaire respondents were majority female and the majority of respondents in total had previously used public transport. 40% of respondents were aged between 40 and 64 years old. 62.28% of respondents do not have dependent children, and 56.14% were employed full-time. 75% of respondents are currently not students. The majority of the highest education level of respondents was diploma or TAFE trade qualifications. Most respondents currently hold a driver's license with 92.04%, and 71.05% live within easy walking distance of public transport. We can also see from the income that the average income was between $40,000 and $59,999. When addressing research question 4, we broke it up into different hypotheses. Hypothesis 7 is that women between the ages of 18 and 24 living in the inner suburbs are more likely to perceive public transport as cost effective. As it can be seen from table 4.1, females aged between 18 and 24 who live in the inner suburbs tend to perceive public transport to have more value for money than those from other age group or those who are male. We conducted an ANOVA report and found no significant interaction between sex age, and where participants lived. There was no significant difference in the mean perception of value for money between men and women. There was no significant difference between the mean perception of value for money between the age groups. There was no significant difference between the mean perception of value for money and for participants who lived in the 4 different locations. For hypothesis 8, we looked at the same group of women and their perceived score on reliability. As you can see, that there was no significant difference between the mean perception of reliability from age or sex groupings. Females in this group tended to find that the reliability was good, but no better than any of the sexes or the other age groups. To test hypothesis 9, we looked at the education level of people and how many days they used public transport in the last week. As can be seen in table 4.3, there are only a slight difference in the mean days used for public transport last week across the 5 education groups. When looking at the highly educated people above bachelor degree, they did use it slightly more than people that had lower levels of education, although it was not statistically significant. When looking at hypothesis 10, we hypothesize that people who earn over $80,000 per year would use public transport on more days per week than people who earn below $80,000. It can be seen that people who earn over $80,000 on average used the public transport slightly more, but it was not statistically significant. So therefore, a conclusion cannot be drawn. Although people used public transport more in these economic brackets, as we can see from the histogram, the majority of people did not use public transport at all in the previous week. The limitations of this study was that the sample of respondents was from disparate areas of Victoria. This was due to the researchers being located in various areas of Victoria. 2 researchers are located in rural areas of Victoria, which is not well serviced by public transport. Although the vast majority of respondents have caught public transport before, half of the respondents had not caught public transport within the last week. More respondents from suburban and inner areas would give a more accurate reflection of public transport users due to more accessibility. When analysing the age demographic data against perceptions of value and reliability, the plus 65 group was underrepresented compared with the other groups. Due to the small sample size, it would be difficult to draw conclusions for this age group. Also, the results for the number of days used of public transport compared against perception would be difficult to draw solid conclusions due to the small sample size. As mentioned earlier, the majority of respondents had not used public transport in the last week. The study's results could be improved by addressing these small representative numbers. When assessing open-ended questions, 2 major points became apparent. These were that the respondents considered not having to find parking at the destination a major reason for catching public transport. On the negative side, other passengers that were disorderly was a major reason why people did not want to use public transport. These 2 points could be considered for future research about public transport. When looking at the question of public transport usage perceptions across demographics, some important results became evident. One was that the majority of respondents had lived within easy walking distance of public transport and worked full-time. Secondly, was that a significant number of respondents did not use public transport in the past week, and that almost all respondents had to hold a driver's license. As the previous questions have observed, there is a perception that public transport offers value for money and is reliable. These results show that there are other reasons why people are not using public transport in higher numbers. There was not a significant difference between males and females in terms of usage. This also applies to the different age demographics. We hypothesized out of all the respondents that women who live in inner suburbs would report that public transport was cost effective and that the same demographic group would find that public transport was not reliable. It was found that this demographic did not report their perceptions in a statistically significant result over the other demographics, but were in line with them as all respondents had positive perceptions of public transport, value for money, and reliability. One demographic that reported higher usage of public transport usage over all others was people earning over $80,000 per annum. While this was not significant, this group on average used public transport 35% more than other groups within this demographic profile. Our recommendations for Public Transport Victoria are to use the results of this study to build a public awareness campaign to increase usage of public transport overall. As it was reported that respondents have a positive perception of public transport being value for money and reliable, this information can be used to persuade people from driving their cars to using public transport more often. By highlighting to people that live in areas that are convenient to access public transport by walking, that public transport is value for money and will arrive on time will give users more reasons to leave the car at home and use public transport. The study showed that not only were value for money and reliability important to usage of public transport, but also the convenience of not having to worry about parking at the destination was a major factor in using public transport. Further study into how high parking rates as a factor for choosing to use public transport should be further explored. In terms of what discourages use of public transport was not feeling safe while on public transport. This also warrants further study as to why people feel unsafe and how it can be addressed to improve feelings of safety while on public transport. While the sample size was small, there was a positive perception of public transport usage among high income earners. This information can be used in terms of building the campaign and what kind of media would be consumed by this audience to ensure that the message reaches this demographic. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it and find the information valuable.